want to first of all welcome all our guests and viewers, listeners from all over the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are continuing the discussions on the most burning, hot topics of sports and innovation. Today we have a very special panel and special topic, which for me is fascinating, to focus on what is the new role of the academia as with regards to sports and innovation. And there is a lot of topics which we would like to cover today. We have great panelists. You can see them here and they will introduce themselves in a few minutes. But I want to start with maybe a quick opening on two topics. First of all, it's clear, wherever we look, that sports needs innovation now more than ever. And it's clear that with what's happening around us, and we can see now the ghost games without fans and the impact on retail. I met recently one of the top ladies from one of the biggest sport brands. They are really looking now at all their innovation strategy, avatars, esport. Everything now is they're rethinking and rebooting their strategy. Now, in terms of the innovation, it's here, and we see clubs, federations, leagues, brands, more and more now bringing innovation into the center stage and looking for ways to help them bring sports back. Whether it's innovation, deep innovation, which could impact the game and the way we can see it from home and the way we can see it from, different places in the stadium now where the new structure will happen with some fans allowed in and so forth. Whether it's about the experience in the stadium, they speak now about no touch technologies, which will need to happen. So when you're waiting for the hot dog, or if you're, getting in, there will be all touchless technologies. The sports world now is moving forward, and also we understand and we can see that there is an openness for new technologies. We can see that more and more people now are okay with doing automated actions, which perhaps they were reluctant in the past. So this has an impact on the way people are going to consume, the people going to behave. This has impact on everything, I believe, in our lives, but specifically on sports. So that's something that I'm curious to know, what will be the impact? What will be the impact of the role of education and universities and the role they're playing in this game plan. In addition, just to get you maybe I would say to tease you a little bit, I saw a short movie yesterday. I don't know if you know, there is a young guy called Nash Daily. He is doing videos all over the world, and he was doing a video each time from different parts of the world. This time he was talking about how academy is dead and it's going to change and it will never come to be what it was. I saw it yesterday, like a minute. And he says basically that with all these big fancy, all these big premises and the rent and the academia will need to change, will be more focused on specific things. You'll have academy on specific topics. All the big infrastructure when you needed to go physically will change. And he's bringing some disruptive idea that the old model of universities will change as we know it. Now, I want to ask you, first of all, what was the impact of COVID-19? I will start with you, Michael, if it's okay, from London. Loughborough University, one of the leading universities in the world in sports science. What was the impact of COVID-19 on you, and how do you see the role of academia playing now with all those massive changes around us?
Yeah, thanks, Amir. Well, it's certainly been a disruptive period, one that has brought a number of challenges and, of course, opportunities. I think at Loughborough, we're a campus-based university. We have a large campus in the middle of the country and a second research postgrad campus in London on the Olympic Park. And we attract students from all around the world to those two campuses. So we've rapidly mobilized to put our content online. I think that's pretty well been the norm around countries that have certainly been affected most by COVID. So there's nothing unusual with that, but the pace at which that has been mobilized, I think, has been impressive, both at Loughborough and a number of peer universities in the UK and beyond. I think as we look forward, I certainly don't agree with the characterization that, if you like, the classic campus-based university is dead. I really don't think that's the case at all. But those universities that embrace change and recognize that we can do things in a different way, perhaps accelerate the rate at which we innovate, blended teaching, for example, and content to students that would not otherwise be able to join us is clearly a part of that, and how we partner on research and knowledge exchange and so on and so forth. But once we get through this most disruptive period and we get back to some sort of normal, where social distancing is perhaps not quite as acute and people are not isolating in the same way, then of course, as human beings, we will want to socialize. We will want to share experiences together, and there will be no substitute, in my opinion, for the infrastructure that enables that in a plural higher education environment. So I'll pause there by recognizing lots of disruption, lots of things have needed to change. There will continue to be a need to evolve our offer, but the best campus universities in the world will thrive in this environment, not perish.
Excellent. Thank you for this, Michael. And it will be interesting later on maybe to come back on, you mentioned that there's some adjustments and disruptive, I would say, changes that you will already considering to take. Interesting to know if you can share a few of those. Now, I want to go to Italy. Paolo, thank you for joining us. Obviously, Italy suffered quite severely and was, I would say, like the first to lead this, and you've done remarkably well eventually. And I know that, a lot of knowledge was transferred from Italy that saved a lot of lives later on. But I want to ask you the same question. I know you're many years in sports and in the university, and also with your entrepreneurship background. How do you see the role of universities these days? And where is it going, and how did the Corona impacted you?
Okay, thank you very much, Amir, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar. As you said, the COVID-19 had a very bad impact on Italy, so probably it's not very nice to say that there were also some positive effects of COVID-19, because actually there were, but that doesn't cancel the fact that lots of people died. So this is, of course, the real side of the pandemic. Speaking about the university, I think what was amazing for me, I mean, I didn't expect at all to happen, is that in 2 months, we've done more progress on on the adoption of technologies than we've done in the last 10 years in the university. Wow. Especially for teaching and interacting with students. So I fully agree that the physical campus will not disappear, but for sure, things that we thought were just impossible 2 months ago have become normal very quickly. So we have graduated thousands of students online. We teach many classes online. We have interview with students very frequently online. And even in areas like humanities, where professors said it's just impossible to replace physical presence with it proved that it's not impossible, it's just that we need to pay some effort. And just to conclude, we also moved all our fitness and training classes online with the University Sport Club, which was incredibly successful. Again, I didn't expect that students would attend the online fitness classes, but they did. And so even for amateur sport, not professional sport. This was a surprise, and maybe we can really expand our offer of classes, because we don't need to have big gyms or big spaces for some activities. So this is another lesson that we'll try to learn and to think about for the future.
Great. We'll come back to you later on with some things I know you're already doing on ground. David, let's move to New York. New York also suffered quite severely, and probably still do. David, where are you on that? What's your game plan at the moment?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me to the panel, and thank you for everyone to join this panel. A couple of ideas on this. I certainly want to echo what many of the others have said, that there's going to be disruption and academia is going to need to innovate. Here in the United States, we have a very robust academia, I guess you could say, with more than 4,000 institutions of higher education. And I would suppose that there's going to be some consolidation, that some universities, some institutions are going to be forced to close. But at the same point in time, then that gives opportunities for other universities to grow in size. And not just some are going to grow, I think some will also specialize and will become more focused on certain areas of learning. And what I think another opportunity here is, because of this adoption of technology that Paolo was just describing, I think there's also an opportunity to really re-engage some of the faculty and people who are working in academia to consider that principle of lifelong learning, and that we need to be learning many of these new technologies. We need to be learning how to do this. We need to be more nimble when it comes to facing and overcoming some of these challenges. So engaging faculty, staff, training them how to do, use more of the technology. I think these are some of the ways in which COVID-19 has positively affected.
Thank you very much, David. Lisa, hey, from Minnesota. You're investing a lot of time in research and education. What's your thoughts on this from where you are now?
Well, I don't know if, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of the panel. And University of Minnesota is a research intensive institution. And so our main focus is research, education, and then public engagement. And I will say, I totally agree with the panelists. We have to be nimble. We've had to adapt to a change. But I'd also say at the University of Minnesota, where our role in terms of partnering with industry and making sure that we have the right infrastructure so that we can adapt to grand challenges as they appear, it made us assess, do we have the right infrastructure so when there are these grand challenges like a pandemic and we have to totally change our delivery, are we prepared and are we a part of the solution? Like our med school worked with Mayo Clinic in terms of developing very quickly a testing procedure for COVID-19. That was done within 14 days. That's unheard of. And so we were able to assess our Minnesota Drive, our Discovery, Research, and Innovation program. Does that have the right infrastructure to make sure that we can quickly partner with industry to address a grand challenge like this? It will have an immense economic impact on the institution, but I feel like we are in a good position because we are prepared for potentially the future, and I think we'll be okay with what will happen. The other thing that I think it's made us think about is, are we being innovative in thinking and forethinking predicting what's coming around the corner, what's going to happen, and what's the next pandemic, or what's the next situation that could impact our delivery and content, and what kind of content and the type of research that we do. So we have to be thinking, especially in the sport industry, being forethinking what could happen, and are we prepared, and do we need to develop new technologies to be able to address something as critical as this?
I like the idea of being part of the solution. I will move to Scott now in Canada.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me as part of this as well, and among the great panelists here, and to everybody listening across the world, wishing you and the best and health to you and your family. University of Guelph is located about 40 minutes outside of Toronto, which is a major epicenter of COVID in Ontario right now. And I serve two hats as the Director of Athletics at the university and also the Assistant Director for the International Institute for Sports Business and Leadership and faculty in the Business School in Sports Management. So from a curriculum academic standpoint, our school is going to be a hybrid for the fall. We're one of the few in Ontario that will be a hybrid of in-person classes and online classes. A lot of schools are mostly focusing online. And for that, we've been looking at how do you continue to have that personal touch, that personal aspect with your university students in the fall for what they look for as part of that. And it will be interesting on how that looks and how that is managed and how each faculty member delivers of such. From my other hat as Director of Athletics, we have 32 varsity intercollegiate teams and 750 varsity athletes. And what this has done for us with all of our facilities closed and all still in a stay-at-home policy here in Ontario, it's had us to really manage the anxiety of our athletes. And I say you're dealing with thoroughbreds here of people that are very active, very social, and like to be out. So we've transitioned from the culture of the student first, the athlete second, to a culture of managing the mental and physical well-being of our student athletes. And that's become the focus for us right now. When we'll be able to get our athletes back on campus and training again is not quite known yet. We're hoping in the next 30 to 60 days. But in that time, we've had to switch our focus to virtual. Our football team just had an offensive team meeting virtually online on Saturday. And I think people understanding the use of technology and the benefits that it brings. And like other companies around the world, I do see a broader focus on working from home and more of these joint meetings online going forward. So I do agree with what Michael said, that we're going to have to do things different, but they could be better. And some of the changes that are going to come out of this, to me, are going to be positive. And as we know, the human nature is to be a little defensive about change, but we're being forced this time. And how do we look at doing it better? And how do we bring that optimistic view to that change that we need to be? And I'll stop there for now.
Okay, I want to go to David in New York. David, when I think about Academy, for me, it's the resource of entrepreneurship. Most of the great entrepreneurs, even if they dropped out of school, after 1 or 2 years, most of them are there. They are in the universities, they grow there, they are educated there. We see that obviously the role of research and identifying future trends. So potentially the role of university should be amazing, should be huge. Are you happy with the current role of universities in the sport universe?
I think, to borrow from some of the other panelists, we are doing a good job, but we can definitely do a lot more and do better when it comes to preparing students for opportunities with entrepreneurship, opportunities in research. For example, here at St. John's University here in New York City, we've implemented several programs, if you will. One of them is a Shark Tank-like pitch competition, which helps to prepare students in order to try to pitch their businesses eventually to funding sources, investment groups, Series A, Series B, Series C, some of these types of things. In addition, we've brought resources into the classroom. We have a program called the Design Factory, which originated in Finland. And this is an opportunity of instilling entrepreneurship within this design thinking, giving students the opportunity to explore and tinker, if you will, with ideas but also connecting students together, because one student will not have all of the answers that a company might face. So partnering students in an interdisciplinary way is also an opportunity that I think universities can really leverage to success in terms of preparing students for some of these entrepreneurial and entrepreneurship programs, in addition to research as well.
Great. So you're already creating this, as you call them, bridges between the different stakeholders in the sports universe, brands, clubs, federation, investors, students, research. Mike, can you share, obviously, Loughborough University, from where you are and your agreement? I know you have some great partnerships with top brands. How does it work with you? Do you think there would be any change with the role of university in sports?
I mean, I'm sure there will be change, but Loughborough for many years now has looked to impact sport and beyond through partnership and collaboration. And I think that is, those sort of ideologies and those driving forces are as relevant now as ever before. I think perhaps where we can improve further is to go beyond thinking of ecosystems as geographically bound. I mean, for a campus university, it's tempting to try and pull your partners and your main collaborators into your physical space. So we have accelerator programs and innovation centers, and we encourage sports governing bodies and national federations to co-locate physically with us in order to achieve our mutual objectives. And I think all of that remains relevant, but there's no question that the whole world is waking up to what more can be achieved and how we can amplify the local through connecting layers of relevant partners and parties, stakeholders, if you will, remotely as well. So when you add the two together, the local, the national, the international, the co-located and the disparate, I think with time, as we start to understand how to convene that and then how to activate mutually beneficial activities through that distributed ecosystem, the impact on sport and beyond will be even greater. I think what you'll appreciate is that we're just working out how to do that efficiently. And that's, again, we will co-create that vision by trying things and being prepared to make mistakes and then refine what works.
So you believe that there will be more collaboration and more perhaps internationalization of the collaborations that are coming up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I say, my view is fairly simplistic. I think what we're seeing as the fallout of the disruption of the pandemic, setting aside for a moment the tragic human, short-term consequences, and focusing on the institutional positives, it's an accelerating force. We've been moving towards international partnership coupled with local ecosystems. And I think what you'll see is an acceleration of that and a blending of the two in a way that once we come through that and settle into a new normal, we will be more resilient and better able to amplify our collective activities than we would otherwise have been able to do. And there's lots of positives that will come from that. Of course, not everybody can move at the same rate. And I think one of the challenges for universities will be to keep up with the pace of change that is necessary for sports organizations. The clock speed is often very challenging because it's so fast in sport, it's so immediate, and it's so driven by consumer trends and fashion trends and seasonal cycles and so on, that it will be difficult for universities, I think, to keep pace with that in the very short term, but being part of the solution, thinking about what our role is in terms of skills, thinking about how we can effectively partner on understanding what methods work and what doesn't, and then being able to anchor long-term commitments to innovation. Universities and higher education institutes are perfect for that. We can act as a foil to sports organizations that have to think about next week and tomorrow. We are already thinking about the next 5 years, next 10 years. And when you put those two things together, I think it's a very complementary fit.
Great, and interesting to hear this from you as If I remember right, you also have been a pretty successful entrepreneur yourself. So bringing the entrepreneurial side and combining this with the university's objectives and roles, that's fascinating. And speaking about entrepreneurship, I want to come back to you, Paolo, as an entrepreneur yourself, working also in the university. How do you see the entrepreneurial side? Obviously, the university is part of the, you do have a sport accelerator with us, which is great for a few years, but what's your views now? Is it going to change? You know, what is universities doing enough now in terms of entrepreneurship, sports entrepreneurship?
No, I think I must agree with the other panelists that we could do much more than what we do at the moment. But for sure, we're doing something, and some of the actions we took are together with Hype. So I'm very glad that we're working together on this. But I would like to just tell you a very short story, just to explain how we can do better without doing a huge effort to improve. Last year, we started a course in sports science together with the University of Verona, which is something like 90 kilometers from Trento. We are in the middle of the Dolomites, just to locate our city in northern Italy, in the Alps. And we have this class. For the first time in the history of the class, we added a class on information technology for sport. And we decided that at the end of the class, part of the final examination was to prepare a project for a sports startup, combining their background in sport and what they learned in the course about new technologies, from wearables to big data analytics to virtual reality to sensors, whatever it is. And I think that the simple idea of injecting the idea that you can think about solving a problem in your sport through the creation of a new company with a business vision and whatever was so powerful for our students that out of the 5 projects we had at the end of the course, 3 of them were much better than most projects I've seen in other startup competitions. This is just to say that, it's an attitude. It's not that you must teach necessarily classes on management or whatever. That's important. But the idea that you can look at what you do, understand what are the problems, and try to find a solution which can be built inside a new company with a business vision is something extremely powerful. This was the example with the sports science students. I'm sure it can be the same in other domains, but even sticking to sport, I think this is extremely important. I think this is an experience that we should replicate. Some of the students now will apply for the accelerator in sports startups that we have in Trentino with Hype. And just to conclude, this is going to be very important for us in the next years, because in 2026, hopefully, we will host part of the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games, Milano Cortina. 30% of the games will be in our region. So this is an interesting perspective for us to really invest in an area where we can make the difference, because we are placed in an area which is definitely very strong in tourism and winter sports.
Great example, Paolo, and the impact of allowing students to create their own sport tech venture and how they can develop through this process. I'm sure this is something that have tons of value, not just for them, but to the entire ecosystem. I want to ask you, Scott, in Canada, you mentioned in our previous conversation that you had some experience in research and specifically in women leadership. And I want to hear your thoughts in terms of what can you share on this part, and what's your vision here with regards to the role of women within the sport tech industry and the academia?
And I'll have Lisa partner with me on this too, because I know that's a major area of hers. And what we've done in Canada at the University of Guelph, we launched a campaign 2 years ago called She's Got Game, and it was to get more support for scholarships for our female athletes. Typically, alumni were not giving to the women's sport program, and we thought it was important to change that message and change that, and we really emphasized our female athletes, and we took that a step forward under 3 pillars to create an equity platform, equity for pay among our female and male coaches, but heavily investing into more young women to become assistant and full-time coaches as a career. And that's been a major path. So it was around equity, fundraising, and also communicating broadly about this message and this area. And so continue to highlight the impact of female coaches, creating policies around making sure there's a female coach on every team from a safe sport mechanism has been something that we've integrated internally. We just hired a new sports chair for the business school that is a major researcher around women in sport. And just before I turn it over to Lisa on this area, you know, one thing that's going to be major is what is the impact on the younger generations in the future of sport when so many children are sedentary right now and not able to go out and play sports with their teams. Will young people return to sport? And as we know, there's a major drop-off in participation in sport in young women around the age of 10. Are we going to see a further drop-off because of COVID-19? And so the future of sport and participation of sport, what will the gender balance be, and what will equity be around those in different financial classes and their ability to participate in sport and the costs that will bring? So I think I took a different approach from you, Lisa, but if it's okay, I think a good segue for you to pick up on some of that as well.
Sure. So thanks for plugging me in, Scott. Amir, you asked us yesterday to be controversial, so I'll be the first one to be controversial. If you'll notice internationally, the leaders of the world who have managed this crisis, you could say effectively, are women. And so I think it demonstrates that we need more female leaders in decision-making positions in the sport industry. They're capable to addressing and managing crisis or preparing for change and managing through change. And so I think it's really important that we as in the world, as in our culture, change our thinking about having women as leaders. You know, we have demonstrated that we're quite capable, and I think that mindset needs to shift. And I think there's an opportunity right now with the professional sport leagues, women's professional sport leagues, that they've demonstrated that with very little financial support, whether it be sponsorship or TV money, that they've been successful and they've been able to garner support from fans. And it's really hard to be a female sports fan, because trying to find them on TV or finding shirts or whatever, it's very difficult. But I think we're in a situation now that we could look at women's leagues and women leaders to help us through this and think about what innovative ways can we develop, move forward to ensure that we can deal with crises like this. The other thing I'll say, here at the University of Minnesota, we have, I don't know if you know, but we have the most Fortune 500 companies in the States are located in Minneapolis-St. Paul. So those companies are actually seeking out our female student athletes at the University of Minnesota. And so they're looking, because they understand they're female leaders, they've played sports, they can make decisions under pressure, they work well in teams, they have leadership skills, that they're looking to recruit those young women. So hopefully this situation will provide a new avenue for women to get their feet in the door and be leaders in sport organizations.
Yeah, thank you for this, Lisa. And I think it's very important voice to be shared. And just a few months ago, actually, we had it looks like ages ago, the Women World Cup in Lyon, where the American ladies team women's team won the World Cup. And I had the privilege to be there in the semifinal and final. We've done an event for women in sports around there. It was really, really special. And yeah, we ask the same questions when you come to our events. Where are the women? And I think it starts, you know, education and university is a good place to start there with regards to that. And I think it's a message that is very important to put again and again and again. David, from your end, you know, I want to start looking at the future and a little bit of, you know, being disruptive a little bit. Let me ask you this. If I will give you an open check to build the future university, which will focus on sports education, to be the #1 in the world, and you have 10 years unlimited budget for that, can you be open and share with me your vision? How would it look like? What will be the, you know, how the structure will be? How will it be different? What will be the role of this university and the actions? I didn't prepare you for this question, I know, but let's see if you can say a little bit.
As a former entrepreneur myself, I'm happy to take a shot at it. So #1, I would try to partner with sports organizations, whether they are teams, whether they are brands, whether they are leagues, whether they are social types of organizations, recreational sports. One of the biggest challenges we face in academia is preparing students. That's why sometimes academia, I think, is really slow. We're trying to prepare students for unknown careers in the future. And this can be a challenge when students don't know what they want to do or what they want to be in the future. So partnering with many of these different organizations and then trying to expose these students as much as possible to all of these different kinds of environments. You know, there's a lot of research out there today about young people are very socially conscious, they're very green, they're all of these different qualities and characteristics that they may have. But actually trying to pair them, get them experience in and with different types of organizations, that the goal would be to try to match them with, you know, what kinds of roles and responsibilities, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's analytics, whether then it's recreational, whether it's professional, whether it's a female-focused social organization, whatever the organization might be, and try to connect them. On the faculty side, I think there's another interesting opportunity here, which is the triangle in higher education is teaching, research, and service. And I wonder many times if we focus too much on the internal service component, which is committee work, advising, and mentoring of students, and that maybe there's either a fourth component or maybe a separate service component, which is an external service component. And so many faculty probably would scream if they heard you're going to add another responsibility to my already very full schedule. But I think it's really important for faculty members to start connecting, or to connect more, or even the divisions, colleges, universities, connecting with their alumni more in order to try to create some of these opportunities. Many students want a job in a specific area. Can we then partner them with alumni who have those types of jobs to then help them see, this is what I want to do, or, you know, maybe this isn't for me. So I think this type of university would be, there would be focuses on the faculty and expanding some of their responsibilities, but maybe just focusing more on the sport area. But the sport industry is so broad, so lots of different opportunities there.
First of all, I'm shocked, David, that you suggested gently to touch the holy triangle of academia. So well, I hope you will take your words back on that. But on the other hand, I think I'm a bit disappointed that I gave you a free, you know, an open check, and you really just done more of what you have currently in your university. So, you know, Paolo, maybe you can be a big, you know, you have a bigger vision. You'll have some time to add some things, David, later on.
No, I think it's not the bigger vision. Maybe it's a bit more expensive because you gave me an open check. because I think what David said is perfect. Number one, you need really to create an ecosystem of clubs, federations, brands, companies around the university if you really want to have an impact on the sports world. But another thing I really like to do is, because we are thinking of doing it and we don't have the resources, so please send me the check as soon as possible. We would like to really use the environment we have around us to create some, so to say, open laboratories for experimenting new technologies in the real world. Just let me give an example. We are trying to find the resources to create an infrastructure on a ski slope which could be used by anyone in the world to test new materials or new techniques or new whatever analytics for alpine skiing, for example, which is something not very easy to find. So creating these living labs where you can use the environment to give opportunities to big brands to test innovation is very important. And together with this, I'd really like to, so to say, to offer the students community, to the companies outside as a kind of playground, as a kind of, again, living lab where innovation can be experimented and tested, because students are very open to this kind of innovation. They are also very honest about the fact that if they like it or not. So creating an environment where new ideas, new materials, new products, new applications can be tested is also, I think, very, very important. And last but not least, I think I will keep investing in giving opportunities like, the startup accelerator or incubators or venture funds, whatever, to really push students to think about the future in a creative way. So to be able to create their future instead of simply waiting that somebody else will create the future for them. I think this is also very important for me.
Okay, I heard some coins dropping down as you developed, and I can see in Michael's eyes that he's preparing a big bomb now with the future sports university, but we'll get to it in the last. Lisa, what's your vision on that?
My thought is, I'm thinking discovery, research, innovation, and education, and how do we mold those together? And I think you have to create a space, kind of like what Polo said, where we have to encourage students to think outside the box and think of something that's, new. Like, for example, how could we talk to dead athletes, right? And and I know that's kind of crazy, but if we wanted to talk to Muhammad Ali, how could we do that? Or when Michael Jordan passes, how do we do that? So getting students to think about the craziest ideas and having a safe space to do that. And then, then you've got to fund it, and it's got to be long-term. They've got to have scholarships. So it's very expensive. So I'll take your check, and I could probably spend it all in a couple of years with these programs. But I think you've got to have a space. I think you've got to partner with industry to say to them, what do you need, and how can our students come up with these discovery ideas? So whether you want to call it a lab, it's also a partnership, but also a free space to think outside the box and support the craziest ideas. Because I feel like in sport research, sport education, we're too conservative. And we don't allow our students to totally think outside the box and try something crazy, even if it fails. Doesn't even matter. But we have to get in a situation or develop a culture where it's okay to try and be innovative in the academy. We do it with MIT and the technology institutes, but not so much in sport. And I'm hoping in the sport management industry that we will change that thinking and encourage that kind of discovery and innovation.
Yeah. Thank you for this, Lisa, and it's getting more interesting. And in this time of the webinar, usually the numbers of guests are dropping down. We have more and more guests as we are marching on, so that's probably not a bad thing. Scott, what about you?
Well, I hope they don't drop off after this then. you know, you gave a blank check. So first of all is tuition is free for all, and they can all come. And just from my standpoint is the sport industry is so global. So
can they join by Zoom?
Yeah, speaking to what David talked about, I think the sports system is so global now. I would like to see some type of placement or internship or co-op in a global sport firm outside of their country. And I think it's important to look at what other countries and other institutions are doing outside of their bubble in sport and get a different aspect. I ask students when they come into the class here in North America, what do they want to be? They want to be an agent, or they want to be a GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Toronto Raptors. And I try to, my goals with our students is try to broaden that perspective, understand the sports system is so much broader than professional sports or sports agency. So I'd like to see in their curriculum, them having some type of community aspect of a nonprofit lens experience, have a global lens experience. And then I think everybody's talked about this. You have to be entrepreneurial and collaborative today. If you cannot do those two things, you're not going to necessarily thrive in the industry. And having some type of entrepreneurial and collaborative experience that is both in the class and outside of the class will serve those students well. And like I said, getting outside of the bubble of what they feel the sport industry is and getting a global view, a community view, and an entrepreneurial view, I think will serve them well.
I like the idea, and I'm not going to ask it, but it's interesting for me to know if I can finish your universities without having one single entrepreneurship course. If I can graduate without having one single entrepreneurship course. Don't answer, but I'm interested. You could answer if you want, but okay, Michael, we are with you now.
No pressure. Thank you.
No pressure.
I was fascinating just hearing from my co-panelists, and I thought you were a little bit harsh at the start there. Certainly, you know, David's foundation was a great roadmap, and in fact, as I was going through listening to you know, Lisa and Paola and Scott, I'm just thinking about, yeah, they're the things we're doing. You know, so I know we're all doing these things, but we did add enterprise as the third pillar. So we have teaching or learning, research, and enterprise for all faculty, promotions, progression, you know, the way we hire people, and that's about technology transfer and knowledge exchange. We have been building a global community around post-study work placements so that we can plug our student community into work placements around the world. Every student at Loughborough can do a year-out work placement anywhere in the world, and that will, you know, in sport, that needs to be the world's best sports organizations, and that's becoming, you know, increasingly important around employability. And then I'm thinking about, you know, how do you unlock the potential from your people? That's really what it all boils down to. And I'd take some of your resource and I would augment our physical infrastructure. Absolutely. I'd take some of your resource and I would make access to our life-changing student experience. Absolutely, because it's exclusive at the moment. It's unattainable to many. And if we're to reach more, if we're to build our ability to touch people beyond our physical campus, we need to remove some of the barriers. So I would take that resource and then I would think about, okay, how do we unlock potential? And one idea, we've been doing this at Loughborough for a while now, but it's still building. We created a coach and volunteer academy, and we have literally thousands of students doing hundreds of thousands of volunteering hours in aggregate across the year, and we plug them into all of the things that we care about. You know, our community, our partners. We have those students working on innovation projects, entrepreneurship projects, going into the community, both locally, internationally, growing sport and the power of sport to transform lives. And I could amplify that massively if we had the resource to do it, because You have to put the infrastructure and the frameworks, you have to supervise it, you need the partnerships. So I think thinking about how could you go from a locally distributed model to a globally distributed model by putting nodes of expertise where it's needed in order to have a sort of central and satellite model. And Loughborough does not have the resources to do that globally. I think we can do it very well in our locale. Could we do it bigger and better if we could put pockets of support globally? Yes, we could, and that's where I would be tempted to go further.
Like it very much, and just to say that I would probably invite you to consider that some of those infrastructures that you're talking about are digital and are not costing as much. You know, in the past, it was one-on-one. People wanted, I used to work with, work with startups. It was one-on-one. Now you can have Amir on a kilo, on a pound, because it's one too many. So there's so many new opportunities opening up now with the digitalization age and with this openness that we discussed earlier of what's happening now. So I will invite you to consider that perhaps some of the great vision you mentioned is about bringing the right platforms and technologies and automation, not necessarily investing in bricks and premises, but maybe it's another discussion to have. So you mentioned I was a bit harsh with David, and I will take it as a compliment, and will allow David to maybe add one or two things from his side.
Sure, I'm happy to, and perhaps bring everyone's ideas together. You know, one of the things about academia is in many universities, we set up a core group of classes that people take, and then majors and prescribed structure. Could we throw all of that out? Could I take your money and develop an open major? No core, no major classes. Students figure out, here's the university, there are thousands of classes. They figure out what they want to take, what they think, what courses are going to be best suited for what they want to do. Let them try a little bit here, let them try a little bit there. And hopefully, if you also add a layer of advising and mentorship from faculty, alumni, people in industry, then hopefully as they go through the program, eventually it will culminate with, okay, now I can, you could incorporate some of the international, a year abroad opportunities or internships or working with different organizations. So maybe there's an opportunity to create some sort of open interdisciplinary major with no prescribed structure and let students kind of figure some of this out on their own. So I've pulled a little bit from Lisa and Scott and Paolo and Michael and all of their little ideas then to respond. And I don't take what you said at the beginning as a slight. As a former athlete and coach, I'm more than happy to have the coach challenge me to do better. So absolutely happy to, no problem.
That's the right spirit. So we want to do, we are close to finalizing our, our session today, but I think it was fascinating. And I want to do like a short wrap up cycle and ask you for your, I would say, final notes, thoughts, maybe anything else, any disruptive idea that sneaked into your mind in the last 10 minutes. And I will start with our Italian partner, Paolo.
Okay, thank you, Amir. I don't know about disruptive ideas because we're not talking in general about university, but of course the connection, the role of university in sport. I think what would be really disruptive is something like this. On the one hand, I think, speaking for Italian universities, so I cannot generalize, but in general, Italian universities really do not understand sport and the potential of sport. For many, many years, sport was just something that students could do at the end of the day just to stay a bit fit, okay? But it was not thought of as any value for the academic community, except for sports science, which is a subject, okay? But it's not, in general, a structural relationship with sport. Now this is changing, and I think, on the one hand, the university should really understand that sport is a fantastic domain for applying ideas from any discipline, It's not only engineering, it's not only medicine, it's whatever, it's psychology, sociology, even humanities, whatever. Sport is law, is very, very transdisciplinary. So this is very important in one direction. But the other direction is, I'm pretty sure that, at least in Italy, lots of clubs and brands do not understand how universities work. And so what they expect for universities is something unrealistic, okay? So if you understand that the drivers inside universities are getting better students and more top-level teaching programs, growing in rankings, international rankings, publishing more papers to progress with your career. This is a very powerful driver for scholars, of course, and creating value for the local community and for the national and international community through collaboration partnership. If you understand that these are the drivers for university, better students, better research, grants for research, and impact, social and economic impact on society, then I'm pretty sure that the magic triangle, circle between universities, sport, and society can become extremely fruitful and very powerful.
Thank you very much for this, Paolo. Scott, final note.
Yes, I use the word today with my staff is pivot. We have to pivot on a daily basis on how we react, and I think we're going to look at how we do things different and the importance of the student athlete, from my perspective, in the more holistic view, how they come back after this and the resilience they have at that age will be different. How we deliver academia going forward will be different. How we fund certain aspects as well in the future will be different as well. The concern about the future of intercollegiate sports in Canada, with a number of universities already canceling and eliminating programs. What does that look like in our country? What does the American football game look like? And giving concussions and our Canadian Football League in big trouble financially if there is no season and fans and seats. What is the viability of some sports in future generations 10 years from now? And to Lisa, is topic and conversation as well, is what is the future of women in sport? Both from a participatory standpoint and after this are given the vulnerability of the coaching sector right now in sport as well. Are women going to continue to pursue sport as a career? And is that job secure? We always talk about how professional sports is recession proof. We saw that in 2008 and a number of different facets. Is it going to be recession proof post COVID? And that's another aspect that we were looking at. And I said to someone before, I wish we could fast forward 6 months from now, know this is over, and know that we'll be entering that new normal. But there's so much unknown today. The importance of being adaptable, flexible, and your ability to pivot is going to be more important than ever. And as I said to my student athletes, using the term last week, we have now realized this is no longer a sprint. It's going to be a marathon. And with that, your mind, your body needs to be in a good place to sustain that. And I think that's going to be most important going down for the future.
Yeah, resilience. Lisa, please.
Well, I think the central role, at the University of Minnesota's central role is to enhance the quality of life for the state of Minnesota and the global community. And one area that we haven't talked about today, but I would be remiss given it's one of my lines of research, is social innovation. I think sport organizations are in a really good position right now to take a lead role in terms of addressing key social issues. Where governments have failed, I think we can be strategic and think about how can we address key areas where we can increase our competitive advantage while also addressing social priorities. So if we think of sport organizations thinking about what's their competitive context and how can they enhance their competitive context through addressing social priorities and concerns, it's a way to build up your local community, make you more competitive, but also address social priorities, which it can enhance your brand. So I think right now, sport organizations, if they're strategic, they could use this situation to rethink about their social responsibility and shift from this philanthropic emphasis of giving back and volunteering. Very nice, good deeds. But I think they can rethink their role in the community and do far more by collaborating with governments, with other nonprofits, to really addressing key issues. Because I think COVID-19 has really emphasized vulnerable populations and where communities who will be affected when we have a breakdown in our economy. And it's those people that have less than are the most effective. So what would be sport organizations' role to make sure that those people are somehow, there's an investment in their economic futures, their education, and their health. And I know locally, the Minnesota United Football Club, they partnered with a nonprofit foundation, and we're handing out grants to local nonprofits so that they wouldn't go out of business in their local immediate area around the stadium. So that's strategic social innovation right there. And I think more of those kinds of decision or strategic decisions around how they can be innovative around social issues will help the sustainability of sports organizations. So I think we also need to be thinking more than just technology, but also social innovation as well.
Yeah. Social innovation, and the example you gave, and helping businesses around the stadium is so important. All right, and thank you for this, Lisa. And Michael, please, your final note.
Yeah, thank you. Fascinating again, just listening to the other speakers. I think in aggregate, I'm in violent agreement with everybody, which isn't controversial, but it perhaps gives you a sense that as a community, we are often on the same page. And I think it is about amplifying that collective endeavor. Maybe a thought about how in reality you do that as an organization. Well, I'd start with values. Let's think about what really matters to us. Let's think about how we deploy our finite resource. We don't have that open check, unfortunately. Let's think about who we really want to partner with so that we can maximize the impact locally, nationally, and internationally for this constituents, if you like, that we try to support. Our students is one, of course, and we want to co-create that bright future with them, but there are others. So I think, then thinking about, okay, what are our priorities? How do we need to behave? How do we exhibit thought leadership so that we can intelligently convene, so that we can shape policy, so that we can support sports organizations to deliver what on a good day is the life transforming value of sport, not just to the usual privileged few, but to wider reach communities, to have that social cohesion through sport. It is a globally unifying entity, and it sits beautifully with education. And how do we just pull all those themes together in a coordinated, thoughtful way so that together we can be a force for good. Sport, education, global impact needs to be coordinated, and from what I'm hearing today, we've every reason to be positive and to look forward to that, despite the current challenges that we're all dealing with.
Great words. Thank you for this, Michael. And I'm getting very soft in my age, so I allow David, because of what happened earlier, to be the last and to have the honor to conclude the session.
I'm honored to receive that distinct honor, I suppose. So if I'm pulling from a couple of the other panelists, I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of education? What's the role of educational institutions and the academy as a whole? And then as I then combine that with some of my business thinking, I think, okay, well, what about competitive advantage? What is it that we as universities, that we as the academy in general have that maybe other areas do not have? And I think there's two things, and I think they've been highlighted, but I'll drill down a little bit more deeply into it. one is, of course, we have research faculty members. Many faculty members at universities have been uniquely trained and educated on how to do high quality research. And I think there is an opportunity to leverage these faculty members in a larger, better, more substantive way, whether it's on some of the social issues that Lisa was describing or what Scott was describing with athletics or international issues as Michael was describing. There is that opportunity to leverage our research faculty to a larger degree, that maybe not so much teaching, but that opportunity to do more research. And then, of course, we have our professional part-time adjunct faculty. They're titled differently all around the world. They bring a lot of the professional understanding. How can we better leverage some of this information, some of this knowledge base? I think Paolo was the one who was talking about knowledge base, or maybe Michael as well also discussed it. How do we leverage some of these? The last thing, and I think this is kind of Scott's realm, is universities are, at least in the United States, they are considered to be kind of a minor league sports system. Now, whether that's good or bad, we could probably do another complete webinar on this, but there certainly is a community building power of sports. Lisa described some of the social initiatives that have been taken on this idea, the way that sports and education can enhance lives, build community, tackle social issues. And so universities, I think, have an opportunity to, whether it's more on the recreational side, let's build up the health and wellness of our students, or on a more external side, let's build up athletics programs that, can be a staging ground where students can get educated and then be better prepared for their futures, whether as a professional or otherwise. I think there's a lot of ways in which education institutions, the academy, can leverage the advantages we already have built in to a larger degree in order to address many of the things that all of the panelists, I think, have discussed.
I think it's an excellent way to complete the session. They say that, everything in our life needed to relook, to bring a fresh look or reboot or disrupt or whatever. And I think this discussion today just proved how true it is. And I want to thank you again for really, presenting your points and being, put them as they are. And I'm sure this has tons of value to the sport universe, to the sport tech universe, to the academy. I want to thank you, all of you, for joining. I want to thank all our crowd joining us, seeing us now, and we'll see this recording later on. And we'll see you next time on the next topic. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.